We stand before the great Sphinx of Giza, a lion of stone with the eyes of a god. For ages we heard it was made by Pharaoh Khafre, a guardian carved 4,500 years ago. The story is simple and complete. Books talk of ramps and copper tools, of workers lifting blocks for their king. It is a tale of human skill, of a culture at its height. But what if this story is wrong? What if the Sphinx is much older than the Pharaoh, older than Egypt itself? A thing from a lost time when the world was different, when rain fell on a green Sahara, and a people we do not know left their mark in rock. Welcome seekers to Mystery History for Sleep. I am Mr. H, your guide to the hidden past, where truth sleeps under sand and quiet. Close your eyes, see the Giza Plateau not as a desert, but as a land of grass and lakes. Thousands of years before the pyramids, before the Nile fed Egypt, this was a place of life. The Sahara was not a wasteland then. People lived there. They painted animals on rock, animals that are now gone. This was the African human period, a time of reign from 7,000 to 4,000 BC. Some say the Sphinx was made then, not by Egyptians, but by a people whose name is lost. In the 1990s, a geologist Robert Schoch saw something new. He read the story of stone. On the walls of the Sphinx but he saw marks, not from widened sand, but from water, deep lines cut by heavy rain over many years. Rain that stopped long before the first pharaoh. This breaks the story of Egypt. If water shaped the Sphinx when Egypt was green, then it is older than we thought. The last big rains at Giza were over 7,000 years ago, long before the Old Kingdom. If Schoch is right, the Sphinx could be 10,000 years old, a witness to a history we never wrote. But who carved this stone guardian? And why is this story gone? The old tale says Khafre built it. His face is on the statue, they say. Yet there is no writing, no name linking him to the Sphinx. The proof is weak. Look at the temples near the Sphinx. They show no watermarks. Their stone is sharp. This means they were built later, from rock taken from around the Sphinx, as if the Sphinx was already there. Think about that. The Sphinx is huge, cut from the living rock. It took great skill to make, yet it has no name, no dedication. Pharaohs loved to write their names on things, to show their power. A monument this big with no writing is strange. Now think bigger. If the Sphinx is older than the pharaohs, it changes our whole story of human history. We thought big building began around 3100 BC, but a Sphinx from 7,000 years ago belongs to a time we call simple, a time before advanced culture. This is not just about one statue, it is about who we were. Was there a lost culture with great knowledge, a culture that knew the stars on the earth? This idea is not so wild. Other old sites hint at a forgotten past. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey has big stone pillars from 12,000 years ago, before writing, before farming as we know it. In Japan, underwater ruins called Waion I have clean cuts maybe 10,000 years old. These places like the Sphinx do not fit our history book. They suggest a world where knowledge was lost to flood or climate change. Then there is the story of Atlantis, told by Plato 2,300 years ago. He spoke of a great culture 9,000 years before his time. It vanished in a day and night. Could the Sphinx be a piece of that lost world, a guardian left behind? The African humid period ended around 4000 BC. The Sahara turned from green to desert. People moved to the Nile. What if the Sphinx was carved before that change? A monument to a dying world. But why do we not know the builders' names? Why is the Sphinx silent? The Egyptians wrote everything down, yet their greatest riddle has no words. This silence feels like a choice, as if the truth was meant to stay hidden. Some say the Sphinx guards a big secret. The psychic Edgar Cayce spoke of a hall of records under it, a room with knowledge from a lost world. Radar scans found holes under the Sphinx, spaces that look man-made. But when researchers tried to look closer, they were stopped. The Egyptian government said it was nothing. Why the secrecy? Why not look under the Sphinx? The story here is not just about rock and rain. It is about what we were allowed to know. The watcher marks the missing words, the holes below. They point to a truth that shapes history. The Sphinx is not just a monument. It is a question that has waited ages to be asked. Who built it? Why is its purpose hidden? What are we not meant to find? If this makes you question what you know, hit subscribe. We are just starting and Giza has more shadows to show. As night falls, keep the Sphinx in your mind. Half lion, half god watching the sunrise. It saw empires rise and fall. It saw the rains turn to dust. And it stayed silent. But silence is not empty. It is a presence, a way to challenge. The Sphinx is a warning that history is not what we think. The past holds secrets we weren't ought to ignore. The truth may be older and stranger than we can accept. So let us keep asking. Let us keep digging. For the Sphinx is just the first step into a maze, where memory is buried waiting for us to find it. Last time we looked at the Sphinx and its water-worn walls. A hint of a time before pharaohs, when rain fell on a green Sahara, and an unknown people carved a guardian for the ages. Tonight we look at the Great Pyramid itself, the heart of Giza, a giant that speaks not in words but in numbers. Numbers so exact they challenge our past. What if the Great Pyramid is not a tomb or a temple, but a machine of shape and time, made to hold knowledge through the fall of cultures? Close your eyes, let the desert wind fade. Listen as the stones tell their secrets. The Great Pyramid is over 140 meters tall. Its 2.3 million blocks show a vision hard to grasp. Each block weighs many tons. Their work moved and placed with great care. The base is flat within 2 centimeters. It points to true north very exactly. Modern builders with machines find this hard to do. Yet we are told Pharaoh Khufu built it around 2580 BC. A king whose name is found only once inside on a hidden beam. But the pyramid's true language is in its size, its shape, its aim. A code in stone that shows knowledge beyond all Egypt. Let us start with the numbers. The pyramid's base is about 230 meters each side. Its first height was 146 meters. Divide the outside length by the height. You get a number near to pi. Pi is the circle number. It was not officially known until much later. Yet here it is in the pyramid shape. This is not chance, it is precise. The pyramid slope about 52 degrees holds another number, the golden ratio, a number known for beauty and balance in nature and art. These are not mistakes. The odds of both being here by accident are very small. But there is more. Multiply the height by 43,200. You get close to the Earth's polar radius. Multiply the base by the same number. You get close to the Earth's equator length. 43,200 is not random. It links to the slow wobble of Earth's axis, a cycle of 25,920 years. Divide that cycle by 600, you get 43,200. This means the pyramid scale matches our planet. This needs knowledge of stars and Earth's shape that should not exist then. Inside the mystery grows. The king's chamber is made of granite from far away. The stones fit perfectly. Sound in the room acts in strange ways, as if made to echo certain tones. The air shafts, small tubes from the chamber point to stars. The south shaft aims at Orion's belt, the north at the pole star. Not as they are now, but as they were around 2450 BC. This is not simple star watching. It needs tools to measure tiny angles and know star movement over time. No such tools are found in Egypt. Yet the pyramid shows someone had this skill. Who knew these things? 4th dynasty Egyptians knew math for land and trade. But nothing shows they knew pi or Earth size. Their stars were for floods and gods, not for such exact long-term patterns. The Great Pyramid feels like a peak of knowledge that came then vanished. Later pyramids are less exact, their slopes less perfect, their build weaker. If the Great Pyramid was the best, why did the skill fade so fast? This leads to a bold thought. What if the Egyptians did not build it but found it? What if it is a relic of a lost culture? one that put its understanding of the world in stone to survive a coming disaster. The idea of a time machine here was a picture, a structure made to keep knowledge safe through the end of empires. Numbers like pi and the golden ratio are forever. Unlike writing, they do not need translation. By carving these ratios in stone, the builders made a message for any future culture smart enough to measure it. This idea of saving knowledge is not only at Giza. Stonehenge in England, built around 2500 BC, lines up with the sun. The huge stones of Baalbek in Lebanon weigh hundreds of tons and puzzle engineers. The sunken shapes of Waiolagun I hint at a culture lost to the sea. These sites, like the Great Pyramid, seem made to last, to speak across time, not with words but with scale and precision. The Great Pyramid with its number code could be a time capsule, a store of truths for a future that forgot how to count them. But why hide such knowledge in plain sight? Why build so big and leave no name, no writing, no claim? Egyptian pharaohs loved to boast. Their tombs and temples are full of their names and prayers. The Great Pyramid is quiet. It's only Mark Khufu's name in a hidden spot feels like a whisper, not a shout. Some doubt that Mark is real, but even if true, one name does not explain the silence. No prayers, no maps of the afterlife, no rituals on the walls. This silence hints at a use beyond Egyptian religion, beyond one king. Here the shadows get darker. Some say the Great Pyramid was never a tomb. No body, no grave goods were found. Just an empty stone box in the king's chamber, to plain for a king. The chamber's design with its exact shape and sound hints at a job we do not get. Could it be a room for keeping certain sounds? For lining up with space forces? For holding something we cannot see? The air shaft, small for people, point to stars with a meaning beyond symbol. Maybe the pyramid was a tool, a device to work with the universe through sound, through alignment, through the math that rules reality. Then there is a stranger whisper. In the 1960s, writer Eric von Däniken said old monument could be the work of visitors from space, beings who shared high knowledge with early humans. The idea sounds wild, but think of the puzzles. A building pointed to true north, so exactly. Sizes that hold Earth's measurements. Engineering that pushes the limits of copper tools and human muscle. Could the pyramid be a sign, a marker left by a culture not of this world, or one that knew things we have lost? The lack of writing might support this. Why use words when your message is in the universal language of math? This brings a cold thought. What if the Great Pyramid was built to survive a disaster? Not just a flood or drought, but the fall of culture itself. The cycle number in its scale hints at a time longer than human memory. The pyramid's strength through quakes and time shows a plan for geologic ages, not just king reigns. Its silence, its lack of culture marks, makes it for everyone. A message not for Egyptians or their gods, but for whoever comes next. A culture rising from ruin, finding the stars again, would see in the pyramid's ratios a lesson. A lesson in pi and the golden ratio in Earth's place in the cosmos. As we sit with this thought, the pyramid becomes more than rock. It becomes a question, a challenge, a warning. It asks not what we know, but what we admit we do not. The number codes are there, clear in measures that outlasted kingdom. They speak of a people who knew Earth shaped the sky, rhythm the constants that bind all. Were they Egyptians using lost knowledge? Were they a lost culture erased by time or plan? Or were they something else, leaving a gift we are not ready to claim? If these questions stir you, hit subscribe. For the pyramid's secrets are not all out in the night, is still long. The Great Pyramid stands not as a tomb for a king, but as a time machine for knowledge. A structure holding truths too big to say, too strong to forget. Its ratios are a tongue that needs no translator. Its alignments are a map that needs no key. As you drift toward sleep, imagine standing in the king's chamber. Granite around you humming with secrets. The quiet is thick, the air heavy, the stones waiting. They do not tell you who made them. They do not tell you why. They only ask that you measure, that you question, that you listen to the numbers, truths in stars first shown. And in that quiet, you might hear the echo of a world we forgot. A world that built a machine to make sure we remember again. Now we go inside the Great Pyramid, into rooms of granite and limestone that hold no body, no treasure, no story, only silence. We were told it is the tomb of Khufu, a mark of a king's eternal glory. But what if it is not a tomb at all? What if this giant built with impossible care was never meant to hold a pharaoh's remains, but to do a job we cannot yet see? Lie back, let the desert dark wrap you. Listen as we open the mystery of what the Great Pyramid might really be. Inside the pyramid is a maze of holes and rooms. The down hall goes into the rock to an unfinished underground room. The up hall climbs to the grand gallery, a high walk of smooth stone. Beyond that is the king's chamber, a granite heart with a single empty stone vault. This, we are told, is the coffin of Khufu, the pharaoh who built this wonder. But the deeper you look, the less it feels like a tomb, and the more it feels like something else entirely. In old Egypt, death was a trip well planned and richly shown. Tombs were gates to forever, full of writing spells and scenes of the afterlife. The Book of the Dead, the pyramid text's countless marks guided the soul. Pharaohs filled their tombs with treasure, statues, jars, food and wine. Even small nobles had tombs painted with life, scenes meant to last forever. The Valley of the Kings is full of such stories, its walls shouting names and deeds. But the Great Pyramid is silent. No writing graces its ruins. No paintings show the gods. No spells point the way. Just stone angles and an empty space where a king's memory should be. The king's chamber is a wonder of build. Its walls are huge granite blocks from Aswan, 800 kilometers away. They fit so tight a razor cannot slide between. The ceiling granite beams holds the weight of millions of tons above steady for over 4,500 years. Inside sits a granite box often called a coffin, but it is like no other in Egypt. It has no lid, no carvings, no stains of oils from mummy wraps. It is too small for royal coffins, too plain for a pharaoh's pride. No body was ever found, no grave goods, no bits of ritual things. Compare this to King Tut's tomb full of gold chariots, unholy texts, or even small noble burials packed with personal item. The Great Pyramid, said to be the greatest tomb of all, gives nothing but emptiness. Some say it was robbed long ago, its treasure taken, its writing erased. But this idea falls apart. The halls show no signs of forced entry, no chisel marks, no broken seals, no trash from quick theft. Tomb robbers in old Egypt were not neat. They left broken pots, furniture, bits and torch soot. Here there is nothing, no dust, no bits, not even a sign a burial was touched. The box itself, cold and plain, shows no wear from a lid pried off or a body removed. To believe it was robbed, you must imagine thieves so careful they erased every trace, leaving the room clean as the day it was sealed. That is not robbery, that is error, it feels too planned. Others say the pyramid was an early tribe built before tombs got decoration, but this fails against its skill. The Great Pyramid is no simple test. Its shape is perfect, its north aimon matched its inside plan, a masterwork of engineering. The grand gallery, with its stepped ceiling, is a wonder, spreading weight with a care later pyramids did not match. The air shafts from the king's chamber point to stars like Orion's belt, hinting at a link to the cosmos. Later pyramids, like those of Khafre or Men, carry a smaller, less exact, sometimes flawed. The bent pyramid of Neferu built earlier nearly fell until its angle was changed mid-build. If anything, the Great Pyramid is the top, not the start of an art never matched again. So if it is not a tomb, what is it? The lack of burial signs asks us to rethink its use. The king's chamber, with its odd sound, gives a clue. Sounds and their whispers chants echo in ways that feel built, as if the space was made to boost certain tones. Reshaped measured the room and found its size fit sound ratios, making echoes that last strangely. Some say it was a resonance room made to use sound or energy for a ritual or science job we do not get. The granite heavier than the limestone around boosts this effect, humming at certain notes. Could the pyramid have been a tool for working with forces beyond the physical, vibrational, cosmic, or even spiritual? The building star aims deep in the mystery. The air shafts too thin for airflow point to specific stars orient, built south the pole star north, as they were around 2450 BC. This exactness hints at high star knowledge far beyond the practical star watching of Egyptians who tracked Nile floods but left no record of such math. The pyramids aim to true north within a tiny fraction, needs knowing Earth's axis and magnetic field ideas not written in old text. Some researchers guess it was an observatory monument to map the sky, maybe to line up human life with space cycles. But why build so huge, so lasting if just for watching? A bigger idea comes. What if the Great Pyramid was a machine not of metal or wires but of stone and intent? Some thinkers inspired by Nikola Tesla say it was made to make ritual energy, maybe electromagnetic, or sound using ideas we are just relearning. The granite in the king's chamber rich in quartz could act as a conductor or resonator boosting natural energies. The pyramid's shape with its exact angles might focus these forces, making a field effect we cannot yet measure. Tests in the 20th century found small pyramid models could keep organic matter fresh or sharpen blades hinting at traits tied to their shape. While these claims are debated, they feed the thought that the Great Pyramid was a technology its purpose lost when its builders vanished. Then there is the shadow of a stranger chance. The pyramid's size, care and silence make some wonder if it was built with help from beyond Earth. Eric von Daniken in his argued book Chariots of the Gods said space beings might have guided old builders sharing math and engineering knowledge. The Great Pyramid's puzzles, its shame, its weight spread, its lack of culture marks fit this tale. Why else would a culture build something so vast yet leave no name, no story? Could it be a beacon, a signal to the stars, or a gift from visitors who knew their time on Earth was short? This idea stretches belief, but the pyramid's very being stretches what we think is possible. More solid, yet no less deep, is the thought that the pyramid was a store not of bodies or treasure, but of knowledge. Its silence, its lack of writing might be on purpose, made to speak to any culture in any time through the universal tongue of shape. Unlike paper or writing, which rot or become unreadable, stone lasts. The pyramid's proportions, holding pi and the golden ratio, are a message past language, culture, or time. It could be a guard against disaster of flood, a fall of forgetting that wipes all else. By building something to last millennia, its makers ensured that future people would find not a king's name, but a blueprint of the cosmos, a reminder of what was known and lost. This brings us to the heart of the riddle. The Great Pyramid does not act like a tomb. It does not serve Egyptian ritual. It does not praise a pharaoh or his god. It stands apart, a structure that feels alien to the culture that claims it. Its only writing, Khufu's faint mark, is a whisper in a monument that roars with presence. If built for a king, why is it so empty? If built for the gods, why is it so silent? If built for us, what are we to learn? The pyramid does not answer. It only watches its stones, holding secrets that will not yield. If this mystery makes you question the tales we have been told, hit subscribe. For the sands of Giza hold more shadows to explore. As you drift towards sleep, see yourself in the king's chamber. Granite around you humming with old intent. The air is heavy, the silence alive, the stones pressing down with the weight of an asked question. The Great Pyramid is not a tomb, not a temple, but a presence, a machine, a map, a memory. It was built to outlast the world that made it, to speak to those who come after, not in words, but in the tongue of angles and echoes. Whoever built it, whatever they meant, they left us a test. To look past the stories, to listen to the silence, and to wonder what truth lies in the space where a king should be but is not. Now we find a relic that challenges the story's very heart. A single slab of limestone buried in, and that speaks not of making but of mending. The inventory stela found near the Sphinx tells us that Khufu, the pharaoh given credit for the Great Pyramid, did not build Giza's monuments. He found them old and sacred and sought only to save their power. Close your eyes. Let the desert's breath carry you. Listen as a forgotten stone rewrites history. It was 1858. French archaeologist Auguste Mariette knelt in the sand, at the Sphinx's base. He was not chasing big finds that day, just clearing trash as part of a usual Giza survey. His workers, digging through centuries of sand, found a broken, worn piece of limestone plain at first glance. No gold, no jewels, no royal mark, just a slab covered in hieroglyphs that needed careful reading to show their meaning. When the text was decoded, it sent a shake through the world of Egyptology, a shake that has been softly quieted ever since. The inventory stela did not sing of a pharaoh's winds or divine right. It told a humbler, stranger tale. Khufu, the great king of the 4th dynasty, did not carve the Sphinx or raise the pyramid. He found them already ancient and gave himself to their care. The stele as text is unlike the proud writing usual for Egyptian monuments. Pharaohs were masters of propaganda, etching their names and deeds on every surface to ensure they lived forever. Temples bore their mark, statues spoke their divine line, tombs mapped their trip to the gods. But the inventory stela speaks in a different tone, respectful, almost deferential. It tells how Khufu, ruler of Upper and Lower Egypt, came upon the Sphinx buried in, and its form worn but its presence strong. He did not claim to have built it. Instead, he ordered its repair, clearing the dunes that choked its body and building temples near to honor its guardian power. The stela names Isis, goddess of magic, as Lady of the Pyramid, and speaks of a temple beside the Sphinx now lost to time. Most striking, it lists shrines and gifts Khufu set up not as a creator, but as a keeper of something far older than his rule. This is no small detail. In old Egypt, monuments were more than stone. They were faith statements, proof of a pharaoh's divine right to rule. Every structure had a patron, a purpose, a link to the cosmic order that justified the king's power. To find a monument like the Sphinx lined with the equinox, sunrise, and seen as sacred, without a clear royal claim, is not just odd, it is unthinkable. The stela hints that even Khufu's priests, the writers of his divine myth, believed the Sphinx belonged to a time before their king, a holy land that asked for respect, not ownership. If Khufu, the supposed master of Giza, saw himself as a fixer, not a builder, what does that say about the monument we give to him? Could the whole Giza complex, pyramid, Sphinx, and temples be older than the pharaohs taken by a culture that claimed them as its own? The ideas are huge. If the Sphinx was already old when Khufu came, the Great Pyramid, lined perfectly with its gaze, might also be older. The old timeline puts the pyramid's build around 2580 BC, atop of Old King Amengen earring. But the stela hints at a different tale, one where Egypt's greatest monuments were not born of Khufu's one, but found by him relics of a forgotten age. This challenges the very base of Egyptology, which rests on the thought that Giza's wonders came from the 4th dynasty's genius. If they were taken, built by a culture lost to history, then Egypt itself becomes a layer on top of something older, something purposefully hidden, but used where the sand grows heavy with quiet. The inventory stela, despite its big meaning, was quickly pushed aside. After its find, it went to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where it's unseen, rarely shown, never in big displays. Egyptologists called it late-period propaganda, a text from the 26th dynasty, some 2,000 years after Khufu's time, written by priests with unclear motives. They said it was history fiction, a fake to serve political ends we cannot fully see. School books barely mention it, and when they do, it is as a curiosity, not a serious document. This dismissal is so complete, so united, that it feels less like study and more like a set plan to bury an inconvenient truth. Let's pause and think. Why would priests a millennium after Khufu invent a tale that shrinks his legacy? Egyptian tradition was obsessed with lifting pharaohs, especially base figures like Khufu, whose name meant the greatest monument on earth. Later myth-making was common, but it always served to lift rulers, linking them to past greatness, not cutting them down to caretakers. The inventory stela does the opposite. It shows Khufu as a servant of older gods, a mender of holy sites he did not create. If this was propaganda, it is the most unhelpful in history, undermining the divine right of a legendary king. It raises more questions than it answers, casting doubt on the very story it should support. Why would anyone make such a tale unless it held a seed of truth too uncomfortable to hold? The dismissal of the stela makes its own contradictions. Egyptologists use other late-period texts when they fit the set timeline, yet the inventory stela is called untrustworthy because it does not. This double standard smells of mind gate, keeping away to guard the accepted story while stopping inquiry. The stela's message that the Sphinx and maybe the pyramids were already there when Khufu arrived threatens to undo the neat line of Egyptian history. It suggests the pharaohs were not the starters of Giz's wonders but takers-keepers of a legacy they could not fully claim. And if that's true, who were the real builders? What knowledge did they have? And why was it buried under the weight of a new culture's tale? This question echoes beyond Egypt. In old Sumer texts, like the anime Elish tale of ziggurats and holy sites tied to gods older than human memory structures that king's men did not build. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh speaks of Eureka City, with walls built by the gods before its kings took power. Could the inventory stela be part of a wider pattern where old cultures claimed older monuments as their own, weaving them into new myths to make their rule seem right? The stela's link to Isis as Lady of the Pyramid is especially haunting. Isis, a goddess of creation and magic, was rarely tied to specific monuments. Her presence in the text hints the pyramid held a meaning past Khufu's rule, linked to forces or knowledge older than his dynasty. And then there is what is missing. The stela is broken, its edges worn, but the text left is curiously picky. It details Khufu's repair, his temples, his gifts, but says nothing of who built the Sphinx or when. This absence feels on purpose, as if the stone was meant to keep just enough to honor the monument's holiness without showing its start. Some guess earlier writing now lost might have named the true builders a culture erased from history, perhaps by time, perhaps by plan. The stele as survival tucked in a museum feels like a whisper that slipped through a crack, a voice that was not meant to speak. As we sink deeper into this mystery, the inventory stela becomes more than a relic. It is a test to all we have been taught about Giza. It tells us that Khufu, the great builder, may have been a pilgrim kneeling before monuments he could not claim. It tells us that the Sphinx and maybe the pyramid were part of a holy land older than Egypt itself. And it tells us that someone somewhere wanted the truth to fade. Locked in a museum, dismissed as myth. As you drift towards sleep, imagine Khufu before the Sphinx, its stone face looking past him to a horizon he could not grasp. The inventory stela is a whisper from that moment. A whisper that says the past is not what we think and the truth is buried deeper than we dare to dig. Tonight we travel to a time over 1,000 years later, when a prince never meant to be king lay in the Sphinx's shadow and heard its voice in a dream. The dream stela of Thutmose, IV tales of divine promises and buried gods. But more, it shows a truth that shakes Egypt's history. The Sphinx was forgotten even by the culture that claimed it. Lie back. Let the desert's quiet hold you. Listen as a stone speaks of secret lost to time. It is around 1401 BC, the 18th dynasty of Egypt, a time of power and wealth. The Giza Plateau, home to the Great Pyramid and Sphinx, should be the heart of holy respect, a sign of the pharaoh's divine gift. But something is wrong. The Sphinx, that giant stone guardian, is disappearing. Sand has eaten its body, leaving only its head and chest above the dunes. No priest stand its presence. No feast honor its gaze. No writing marks its purpose. This is not the icon we know today, celebrated as Giza's sentinel. It is a neglected relicade, gnawed by the very culture that supposedly carved it under Khafre just 800 years earlier. How could a monument so vast, so central to Egypt's holy land, be left to the desert's embrace? This question sets the stage for a tale that feels more myth than history, yet is carved in red granite between the Sphinx's paws. Prince Thutmose, a younger son of Pharaoh Amenhotep I, was not meant for the throne. His older brothers stood ahead, their divine blood securing their place in Egypt's cosmic order. But one day, during a hunt on the Giza Plateau, Thutmose rested in the shade of the Sphinx's buried form. Tired, he fell asleep between its paws' wares, and had piled high, hiding the lion's body from the world. What happened next is etched on the Dream Stela monument, still standing today. Its words a sign of a moment that changed a prince's fate. In his sleep the Sphinx spoke, calling itself Hormak T, the god of the horizon, guardian of the dawn. Its voice was not triumphant, but sad, heavy with centuries of neglect. It complained of sand filling its throat, choking its spirit of being forgotten by the people who once revered it. The Sphinx had watched the sun rise alone day after day with no gifts, no priests, no notice of its holy watch. The god offered Thutmose a deal simple yet deep. If the prince would clear the sand from its body, mend the temples that had crumbled, and bring back the rituals that had faded, the throne of Egypt would be his, not as a prize for ambition, but as a duty born of service. Thutmose agreed. He gathered workers, cleared tons of sand, and showed the Sphinx's full form for the first time in generation. He gave gold, incense, and prayers, starting a new priesthood to keep its worship. Within months, through events no records fully explain, Thutmose became Pharaoh Thutmose, a ruler of a kingdom he was never meant to lead. The Dream Stela, put up to remember this moment, stands as a sign of his divine meeting, a tale of a forgotten god taking back its place through a prince's devotion. But this story is more than royal propaganda. It is a crack in Egypt's timeline break that shows how deeply the Sphinx had been erased from memory. If it was carved by Khafre, as we are told, only 800 years separate his rule from Thutmose's. Egypt was a culture obsessed with continuity, writing its kings, mapping its tombs, keeping its gods in stone and paper. The 18th dynasty had records of rulers from over 1,000 years before, their names and deeds carefully kept. Yet the Sphinx, a monument beside the Great Pyramid, had no active cult, no priesthood, no place in the holy calendar. It had become invisible, buried not just in sand, but in the shared forgetting of a culture that should have cherished it. How could something so monumental, so tied to Egypt's divine order, slip through the cracks of memory? The Dream Stela, as words add to the mystery. It is not a proud statement of a pharaoh's glory as most writing is. It is intimate, almost personal, describing the Sphinx's suffering, the sand in its throat, its voice muffled, its purpose unmet. The god speaks of loneliness, of centuries spent watching the horizon with no notice. This is not the tone of set propaganda, made to swell a ruler's pride. It feels like a real meeting, a moment when a prince stumbled upon something ancient and abandoned, something that demanded to be remembered. The stela details the depth and quality, the trouble of clearing it, the stone's state after centuries of burial. These details, plain yet vivid, are unusual for royal writing, which usually focuses on divine favor, not work challenges. They suggested truth, too real to be fully made up, and yet there is a shadow over the stele itself. Its top third, where the Sphinx's builder might have been named, is missing. The break is clean, not worn by time, but cut possibly in old days, as if someone wanted to erase a key piece of the tale. What is left supports Thutmose's claim to the throne, a divine deal, a good dig, a political miracle. But the absence of the builder's name feels planned, making the story serve the present without challenging the past. Egyptologists dismiss the stela as propaganda, a myth, to justify an unexpected succession. But this reason fails. For the tale to work as propaganda, the Sphinx must have been already forgotten, its meaning lost to the very people who supposedly built it. Why would Thutmose stake his right on a monument no one remembered, unless it held a power older than his dynasty? This brings us to a deeper question. If the Sphinx was forgotten by the 18th dynasty, what does that say about its start? In Mesopotamia, text, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, describe old cities and structures given to gods or heroes from a far past, their builders wrapped in myth. Could the Sphinx belong to a similar tradition? A relic from a time before Egypt's kings revered yet unclaimed. The stela's link to Hormak the horizon god, ties the Sphinx to the suns, a universal symbol older than Egyptian faith. Perhaps it was a holy site long before the pharaoh, its purpose so deep that even they could only honor, not create it. The Dream Stela's silence about the Sphinx's builder mirrors the monument's own silence. No writing marks its body. No royal claim states its making. This absence, like the pyramids, feels on purpose, as if the builders chose no name over glory. But why? Were they guarding a secret to knowledge, too holy or dangerous to be written? Or did they belong to a culture so distant that their names were already lost when Egypt rose? The stela suggests the latter, that the Sphinx was a mystery even to Thutmose, a god from a time before time, demanding remembrance from a prince who stumbled into its presence. As we drift deeper into this riddle, the dream stela becomes a mirror, reflecting our own questions. It tells us that the Sphinx, now an icon, was once forgotten, buried by sand and neglect. It tells us that a prince heard its voice not in triumph but in need of plea to be freed from oblivion. And it tells us that Egypt, for all its records and rites, could lose track of its greatest monument. As you sink towards sleep, imagine, lying between the Sphinx's paws, the sand warm under you, its stern face gazing at a horizon older than memory. The dream stela is not just a king's story. It is a cry from a god that was lost, and a question that stays. What else have we forgotten? And who made sure we did? We go down under the Giza Plateau into a world of hidden rooms and lost holes, where the earth itself guards secrets older than the monuments above. What lies below the pyramids and Sphinx? A web of tunnels, holes and spaces that hint at a use far past tombs, a use that someone somewhere has worked to keep hidden. Blow back. Let the desert quiet trap you. Follow me into the shadows under Giza. The Giza Plateau is more than stone giants under the sun. Below its surface lies a maze, an underground world that defies all we have been taught about old Egypt. For over a century, explorers have told of strange finds under the pyramids and Sphinx. Holes too regular to be natural. Holes too exact to be mere tomb shafts. Rooms that seem part of a design we cannot yet name. These finds, written in old journals and half-forgotten maps, show a plateau that is hollow, a network of spaces cut with intent hidden from the world above. Yet when these finds surface, they vanish just as fast, sealed off, dismissed or denied. The question is not just what lies under Giza, but why we are not allowed to know. One of the most written of these underground things is the Osiris shaft near Khafre-esque causeway. This straight tunnel drops over 30 meters into the limestone rock, a trip that feels more like a journey to another world than a simple tomb. The shaft has 3 levels, each more mysterious than the last. The top room is small, reached only by a thin hole, needing special gear to pass. The second level is full of groundwater, a murky wall that has stopped full search but saved what lies below. The third level, deepest of all, opens into a big room with 6 side nooks cut with a care that matches the stonework of the pyramids above. At its center sits a stone box, often called a coffin, but it tells a different tale. There are no stains of decay, no marks of mummy oils, no sign it ever held a body. The room's walls, smooth and plain, show tool marks, so even they hint at one skilled team at work. The sound there is old whispers, carry clear, while louder noises seem dulled, as if the space was made to shape sound itself. This is no ordinary tomb. Egyptian burials, even for small nobles, were full of writing gifts and relics to guide the soul. The Osiris shaft has none of these, just quiet care and a use we cannot name. Some call it a symbolic tomb for Osiris, god of the underworld tied to later dynasties. But its depth, its craft, its emptiness feel older, stranger, as if it belongs to a time before Egypt's gods were born. The shaft is closed to the public, rarely studied, barely in official records. Why, if it is just an empty room, why the secrecy? The answer lies not in what it holds, but in what it suggests about the Plato's hidden depths. The Osiris shaft is only one piece of a bigger puzzle. In the 19th century, early explorers like Ernest Alfred Wallace Budge wrote of underground rooms under Giza stretching far past what a tomb would need. But a British Egyptologist I just told of holes and holes that felt too planned to be natural, too big to serve one burial. During Napoleon's trip in 1798, scholars mapped a network of underground space, corridors, stairs and rooms, linking the pyramids and Sphinx in ways that hinted at a joined design. These maps, drawn before modern tourism changed the site, show things that no longer appear on official plans. Some holes were filled with rubble, as if purposefully sealed. Others were clean, as if kept long after their making. These reports detailed an exact word, dismissed as tales by colonial adventurers who did not understand what they saw. But the map still exists, tucked in archives whispering of a Giza we are not meant to explore. In 1926, American archaeologist Herbert Eustace Windler Kraut of catacombs under the cut wall stairs going deeper than any tomb needed, and holes following shape patterns, not the uneven spread of natural cave. These words suggest more than burial sites, a baser foundation for a use we cannot yet grasp. Yet no museum shows models of these spaces. No school books teach they exist. The academic world labels them as cracks and finished shafts or errors of early explorers. But the sameness of these accounts across decades, across cultures, makes dismissal feel less like science and more like suppression. The strongest proof came in 2008, when Egyptian researchers used ground radar to map below the Giza Plateau. Their scans showed a network of empty spaces, tunnels and rooms stretching under the pyramids and Sphinx. Some matched the old maps of Napoleon's team, proving early explorers saw real structures, not dreams. Others were new big-shape holes that could not be explained by natural wear. Under the Sphinx they found spaces with regular shapes hinting at man-made build. Under the Great Pyramid, they sensed rooms unlinked to known holes hinting at a separate older phase of building. Photos from these scans, though rare, show cut stone rough steps and arches and the dark things that do not match the rough tomb shafts of Egypt or the polished stone of the pyramids above. These finds pointed to a complex underground web, one that predates or exists apart from the monuments we see. And then the doors closed. The Egyptian authorities, through the Supreme Council of Antiquities, said there is nothing there. No reason for the photos, no notice of the radar date, and no talk of the historical maps. Access was cut. The finds buried in paper silence. Journalists who asked for answers got blank denials. Tunnels written of measured, even entered worse, yield again. This is not a lone event. In the 1930s, a dig under the Sphinx reportedly found a room between its poles described by workers as man-made. It was quickly filled back and no official report came out. Later radar scans confirmed a hollow space in the same spot. Yet independent researchers were barred from looking. The official line stays firm. Nothing lies under Giza that matters. But when proof is photographed, mapped and then called irrelevant, it's not archaeology. It's a resource. This pattern of hiding raises a haunting question. What lies under Giza that is so threatening it must stay hidden? The underground webs suggests a use past tomb, maybe a base for the whole plateau built before the pyramids rose. The Osiris shafts sound the shape precision of the mapped holes. The clean cuts of buried holes point to an infrastructure, an engineered system, made for a job we do not understand. Some guess it was a ritual space meant to boost sound or energy, like the echo rooms in ancient sites like Malta-S Hypergeum, where sound tones bring trance-like states. Others say it was a store not for treasure, but for knowledge, like the mythical Hall of Records, told by Edgar Cayce, said to hold the secrets of a lost culture. The most unsettling chance is that these rooms predate the pharaohs fully. If the Sphinx with its water, whereas from a time 7,000 years ago, could this web belong to the same builders? A culture that reshaped the bedrock, cutting spaces to last a disaster they saw coming. The build method, smooth walls, exact angles, do not always match Egyptian ways. Some tool marks hint at tools or methods unknown to the Old Kingdom, suggesting a technology lost to history. The flooded second level of the Osiris shaft, saved by water, might hold clues untouched by time. Yet it stays off limits, its secrets drowned in silence. This brings us to a darker truth. The suppression of these finds feels planned, as if the underground web threatens the tale of Egyptian history. If Giza was built on an older base, if its ruins were cut by a people before the pharaohs, it upends the timeline of human culture. It suggests the Egyptians were not the starters of their greatest wonders, but takers claiming a legacy they could not copy. The authorities' refusal to look further, their quick dismissal of proof mirrors a pattern seen elsewhere, texts lost in fires, writing destroyed in quakes, finds quieted by institutional power. Why, what could be so dangerous about a few tunnels and rooms? Perhaps it is not the spaces themselves, but what they mean. A chapter of history. We are not ready to read a culture we are not supposed to remember. As you sink towards sleep, see yourself going down the Osiris shaft. The stone cool under your touch. The air thick with the weight of ages. The rooms below Giza are not just holes, they are questions, cut in bedrock waiting for answers. They speak of a time before kings, before gods, when the plateau was shaped for a use we can only guess. The web under the pyramids is a map of the forgotten, a maze where memory itself lies buried, waiting for someone brave enough to follow its paths. In 1993, a small-wheeled robot named UAUT, meaning opener of the ways, after an old Egyptian god, made history. Built by German engineer Rudolf ten Brink, it went into the Great Pyramid to check its thin air shafts, holes too small for people. These shafts from the Queen's chamber were long thought symbolic, maybe lined with stars, or meant for the pharaoh's soul to rise. They slope up at steep angles, just 20 centimeters wide, their walls polished, smooth, defying ancient tools. ten Brink's job was practical, to better air flow and map the shaft's end. What UAUT found was not routine. As it climbed the south shaft over 60 meters long, its camera sent back images that stunned the world. A stone door perfectly fitted with 2 copper pins sticking out like silent guards. This was no collapse, no rough end to a hole, but a planned wall sealed for millennia, hiding something the pyramid's builders did not want found. The video was gripping. The shaft's walls, untouched by time, shone with precision, their limestone blocks joined so tight no mortar was needed. The angles never strayed. The surfaces showed no tool marks, as if cut by a method we cannot explain. Then at the end, the door appeared a smooth rectangle, its copper pins glinting under the robot's light. These pins were not hinges or handles. They were too small, too odd for any mechanical use. Were they symbols, signs of a holy line, or something else? The find sent waves through the archaeology world. Here was proof of hidden spaces inside the pyramid. Spaces sealed since its making, challenging the idea that every room had been mapped. The world watched breathless as news said a new age of search was here. Could this door lead to a lost room, a store of old knowledge, or something stranger? But the thrill was short. ten Brink's work was suddenly stopped by Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. His access to the pyramid cut. His research halted with no reason. The official cause was he had gone past his job, which was only for air, not search. Yet the door was found during proper shaft check, and stopping the search at the moment of find felt like more than rules. It felt like suppression. The media buzz faded and the door stayed sealed, its secrets untouched. Why, what could lie behind a stone slab that needed such fast silencing? The question stayed unanswered for almost 10 years. In 2000, a new team got access. Armed with a better robot, the Pyramid rover with cameras, drills and fiber optic tech. The world tuned in again, expecting answers after years of quiet. Live shows promised to show what was behind the mysterious door. The robot went up the same south shaft, its cameras catching the same perfect stonework, until it reached the door with its copper pins. With great care it drilled a small hole through the slab, a job that showed the stone's great hardness, as if made to resist entry. A fiber optic camera, a winton in the world, held its breath, hoping for treasure writing, or look into the pyramid's heart. What the camera showed was another room, empty, exact and quiet, with a second stone door on the far wall. No hieroglyphs, no objects, just more stone, more mystery, and another wall. This find only deepened the riddle. Why build a shaft too thin for people leading to a sealed door only to hide another door behind it? The room's walls were as smooth as the shaft its build, as careful, hinting at a use past decoration or ritual. The copper pins hammered flat seemed to mark the first door as important, maybe a warning, or a sign of something holy. But the second door, identical in its quiet, hinted at a plan meant to delay, to confuse, to protect something not meant to be reached. The broadcast ended, the press cycle faded, and no more trips were made. The second door stays unopened, its secrets locked, and the official story returned to silence. Some said the mystery was solved. The shafts were symbolic, the doors meaningless, the room empty. But emptiness is not nothing. It is a choice, a design, a statement cut in stone. The ideas were deep. The shafts and doors hint the Great Pyramid hides spaces we have never seen. Built with a care that challenges our grasp of ancient technology, the shafts keep exact lines over 60 meters. Their angles never off, their surfaces flawless. This is not the work of crude tools or quick build. It is the product of a vision that planned every detail. The copper pins made of a metal holy to Egyptian faith add another layer. Copper linked to the gods and divine power was rare and hard to work in old times. Why put it in a hole no one could enter? Some guess the pins are markers not for opening the door, but for showing its import, a line not to be crossed, a secret not to be told. This brings us to a bold guess. The doors might lead to the fabled Hall of Records, a room described by mystic Edgar Cayce in the early 20th century. Cayce said under the Sphinx and inside the pyramid lies a store of knowledge from a lost culture. Maybe Atlantis holding text stools, or even tech that could rewrite history. The raid oddities under the Sphinx found in the 1980s and 2000s support the idea of hidden spaces, and the pyramid shafts might link to this web. The doors sealed with such care might guard this archive, meant only for a time or a people ready to understand it. The copper pins, symbolic of divine link, could mark the edge to this holy knowledge, a test of wisdom, not force. But why stop the search? The silencing of Gan 10 bringing the halt after the pyramid rovers find suggests more than caution. It suggests fear. The Egyptian authorities, backed by groups like the Supreme Council of Antiquities, have always blocked access to sensitive sites. Is it about saving the monuments or saving a story? If the doors led to proof of a culture older than Egypt, one with high tech or knowledge, it wouldn't do the timeline of human history. The pyramid given to Khufu would become a relic of an older world, and Egyptology's base would crumble. This threat might explain the pattern of denial tunnels, sealed radar data, this mystery searchers turned away. It is as if the truth behind the doors is too dangerous to face. This pattern is not only at Giza. In Mesoamerica, digs at Teotihuacan found tunnels under the Pyramid of the Sun sealed for centuries. Yet search was limited by official blocks. In Turkey, the ancient site of Göbekli Tepe from 12,000 years ago faced delays in study, its meaning for early culture too disruptive to take in fast. The doors in the Great Pyramid fit this mold. Finds that challenge the story of human progress meet quiet, not science. Could there be a global effort, ancient or modern, to keep certain truths hidden? Some even whisper of space being involvements, suggesting the pyramid's current hidden ruins point to alien builders of thought, made popular by Eric von Daniken. While I guess it underlines the question, why build something so complex, so unreachable, unless it was meant to stay a mystery? Picture Cairo in the late 1800s, a city alive with the fever of find. European collectors, scholars and adventurers searched Egypt's markets and monasteries, hungry for relics of its ancient past. The 19th century was the gold age of Egyptomania, when every artifact, every papyrus promised to open the secrets of a culture that had gripped the world. In a quiet Coptic monastery away from Cairo's streets, a collector, maybe Austrian, maybe French, met an old monk, the keeper of a small bundle of manuscript. These were no normal texts. Coptic monasteries for centuries have been safe houses of knowledge, keeping bits of early Christian and pre-Islamic writing through wars, invasions and time's steady march. The monk said his collection held treasures passed down for generations. Texts that had survived when empires fell, copied and copied by hands that honored their weight. Among these manuscripts was a scroll that stood apart. Written in Sahid, I see Coptic, a tongue of Egypt's early Christian era. It was laced with older phrases. The monk could not read hints of a language older than even Coptic speech. The scroll's content, as told to the collector, was staggering. It spoke of a land along the Nile before its modern path, before the river's great bend, before the delta formed. It described 3 great beacons of stone, not named as pyramids, but as structures lined to the stars, sealed not as tombs, but as vaults of memory. The text called them ancient, built before speech, before the Nile changed its path, before the kings of Egypt rose to power. When the collector pressed for meaning, the monk's words were cryptic. They were built before words, before the river knew its place. This was no myth of pharaohs or gods. It was a glimpse into a time before history as we know it. The collector bought the scroll with others and took it to Ur, where language scholars waited to read its secrets. The 19th century was a time of careful study, with universities and museums putting much into translating old texts. Language experts would have looked hard at the Coptic script. Historians would have compared it with known sources. Archaeologists would have tried to match its descriptions to physical sites. The scroll promised to be a Rosetta Stone of sorts, a key to a chapter of human history we have never read. Its mention of the pyramids as beacons and vaults of memory suggested they were not tombs but something else, maybe stores of knowledge built to survive a disaster that erased their makers. If true, this text could have broken the timeline of Egyptian culture, putting the pyramids in a prehistoric age tied to a people we have never named. But before one word could be read, tragedy hit, or so we are told. The details are frustratingly vague. Some accounts say a fire ate the collector's private study, burning the scroll to ash. Others claim it was an archive building, maybe in Vienna or Lyon, where the manuscript was kept. The uncertainty itself is suspicious, as if the story was meant to blur into nothing. What we know is this: the scroll was lost with much of the collector's collection in a blaze that left no copies, no photos, no detailed notes. This was no normal loss. In the 19th century, scholars knew the fragility of old texts. Important manuscripts were oft uncopied, sketched, or described to stop such disasters. The Nag Hammadi library, another Coptic treasure, survived because of such care. Yet this scroll, possibly the biggest find of its time, vanished without a trace, leaving only a second-hand letter quoting the monk's cryptic words about the Nile and beacons. This disappearance feels too convenient, too perfectly timed. A text that might have placed the pyramids before speech, before Egypt was destroyed, just as it reached the hands of those who could read it. The letter, the only surviving reference, gives no details past the monk's claim, as if the scroll's very being was meant to be a whisper, not a shout. Historians dismiss the story as a mistake, suggesting the scroll, if it existed, was a late Gnostic fable, a symbolic retelling of Egypt's mythic path. They point to the 19th century trade in fake relics, where locals sold forged artifacts to eager Europeans. But this reason feels like containment, a way to tuck an uncomfortable chance out of sight. If the scroll was a fake, why destroy it before its truth could be tested? Why ensure that no scholar, no language expert could ever see its worth? The scroll's loss fits a disturbing pattern. Across history, texts that challenge set stories have a habit of disappearing. In the 1700s, French scholars wrote of writing Nerus, one listing kings before Menes, the supposed first pharaoh of Egypt. It could have stretched Egypt's test line by thousands of years, but the wall fell in a quake. Its rubbings lost the site, never dug again. In the early 20th century, a German language expert said he had read in Nubian papers mentioning stones of resonance west of the Nile, only to die in World War I, his notes scattered. Each event alone seems like bad luck. Together they suggest a plan, an unseen hand, making sure certain truths never live long enough to be heard. The Coptic scroll, with its talk of pyramids before speech, fits this mold perfectly. It was not lost to time's decay, but to a fire that burned at the exact moment it might have said too much. What makes the scroll so haunting is what it might have said. If it described the pyramids as vaults of memory built before the Nile's modern path, it fits other clues we have found. The Sphinx's water, where points to a time 7,000 years ago when rains fell on a green Sahara. The Great Pyramid's math codes suggest knowledge of Earth's size and space cycles. The underground web under Giza hints at a base older than the pharaoh. The scroll could have tied these threads together, naming a culture that built Giza's wonders before Egypt existed. A culture that sealed its knowledge in stone, knowing its world was fading. The monk's words before the Nile changed are especially chilling. Rock records confirm the Nile's path shifted over millennia, its delta forming around 4000 BC. If the scroll dated the pyramids to this earlier age, it would put them in a prehistoric world, challenging our grasp of human progress. This brings us to a darker question. Who had the power to destroy such a text, and why? The fire was not an act of war or conquest, like the burning of the Library of Alexandria or the ruin of Maya books by Spanish conquerors. It happened in peacetime in the hands of a collector who had every reason to save it. Was it an accident, or was it erased to protect the story? If the scroll proved the pyramids predated Egypt, it wouldn't do the myth of pharaonic creations, suggesting the Egyptians were takers not starters. It would force us to rethink the start of big building, the spread of high knowledge, and the chance of a lost culture, perhaps Atlantis as Plato described, or another society erased by disaster. Such a truth might have been too dangerous, not for national safety, but for the tales we tell about our place in history. As you drift towards sleep, imagine holding that fragile scroll, its ink fading under your touch, its words hinting at a world before words. The Coptic scroll is gone, but its absence speaks louder than its text ever could. It is a reminder that some truths are too vast to be kept, too fragile to survive the flames of time or the hands that light them. The scroll burned, but its echo stays, a whisper of a time when the pyramids stood before kings, before speech, before the Nile cut its path, waiting for us to remember what was never meant to be forgotten. The Giza Plateau is a monument to human skill, or so we are told. The Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, the temples credited to the 4th dynasty, a sign of Egypt's gold age. Yet every clue we have seen points to a different tale. Water, we're hinting at a prehistoric start, math codes to advanced for their time, empty rooms that defy burial, ways and texts like the inventory stela and dream stela that describe mending not making. Under the plateau, a web of tunnels and holes hints at an early youth. While robots find sealed doors, no one is allowed to open a scroll. Speaking of pyramids, before speech vanishes in flame, each find, each oddity meets the same answer: dismissal, denial, or outright erasure. This is not random. It is a pattern, a planned effort to control what we know about Giza. And it raises a cold question. What truth is so dangerous it must be hidden at all cost? The heart of this hiding lies with Egyptology itself, a field built on hard study, but also on set stories. The accepted timeline puts the Great Pyramid and Sphinx in the 4th dynasty, around 2580 BC, made by Khufu and Khafre with copper tools and human labor. This tale is neat, logical and comforting. It fits our grasp of human progress, a steady climb from simple to civilized. But when proof challenges this timeline, it is not met with curiosity, but with resistance. The inventory stela, which suggests Khufu mended the Sphinx, is tucked in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, rarely shown, dismissed as late-period propaganda from the 26th dynasty. The dream stela, telling of Thutmose Iver's divine meeting, is called a political myth, its meaning ignored. The water, whereon the Sphinx, pointing to a time 7,000 years ago, is brushed off as wind or groundwater, despite rock proof to the contrary. Why? Why does every oddity face the same fate, buried, discredited, or forgotten? This pattern of dismissal is what scholars call mind gatekeeping. Egyptology, like any academic field, guards its base fiercely. The timeline of the Old Kingdom is a cornerstone built on decades of research, carbon dating and artifacts, like the Diary of Mir, or which tells of limestone move for Khufu's pyramid. To admit that Giza's monuments might predate Egypt, or that they were built by a lost culture with high knowledge, wouldn't do this base. It would force a rewrite of not just Egyptian history, but human history, suggesting that smart societies existed thousands of years before we thought possible. Such a shift would challenge Job's names and the power of groups like the Supreme Council of Antiquities, which watches Egypt's dig sites. The stakes are high not just for science but for power. Think of the treatment of the underground web under Giza. In 2008, Ground Rider showed a complex of rooms, tunnels and holes, some matching 19th century reports by explorers like Wallace Budge and Napoleon's team. These spaces with their exact cuts and shape patterns, shape past the use past tombs, a base maybe for a culture we do not know. Yet the Egyptian authorities said there is nothing there. Photos of cut holes, radar scans showing man-made holes and historical maps were ignored or suppressed. Access was cut, researchers turned away, and the finds vanished from public talk. This echoes earlier events. A 1930s dig under the Sphinx found a room only to be filled back without study. Rudolf Gantenbrink's robot UPUAUT-2 was stopped after finding a sealed door in 1993. The Pyramid Rover's 2000 to find of another door led to no more search. Each time the door to find slams shut. This is not just about saving artifacts from harm. The Supreme Council of Antiquities, backed by the Egyptian government, controls access to Giza with a strong hand. Digs need permits, money and official okay, often tied to political and money interests. Tourism is Egypt's lifeblood, and the story of Giza as a pharaonic feat brings millions of visitors each year. A tale of a lost culture of pyramids older than Egypt could break this industry, casting doubt on the nation's cultural gift. But the plot runs deeper. Some guess that global groups like UNESCO, which funds and runs dig sites, have a stake in keeping the status quo. A find that rewrites history could shake not just Egyptology, but our grasp of human progress, challenging the straight story of culture's rise. And then there is a stranger chance, one whispered in the edges of guess. Could the hiding involve forces past school or government? The care of the Great Pyramid, its link to Orion's belt, its holding of math constants like pi and the golden ratio, these oddities have fed thoughts of space influence made popular by writers like Eric von Däniken. If Giza's monuments were built with otherworldly knowledge, or if the underground rooms hold proof of high tech, showing them could end more than history books. They could challenge our place in the cosmos, suggesting contact with beings we are not ready to see. While this idea stretches belief, it underlines the stakes. A truth that changes our grasp of humanity, as past might be too disruptive to be allowed into the light. The pattern of Ereshkigal goes past Giza. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform tablets telling of pre-flood cultures were dismissed as myths, until digs like Göbekli Tepe 12,000 years old proved otherwise. In Mesoamerica, the Maya codices were burned by Spanish conquerors, erasing knowledge that might have matched European science. The Coptic scroll describing pyramids before speech fits this mold, a text that could have broken Egyptology, lost in a suspiciously timed fire. These events, spread across centuries and lands, suggest a set effort to control what we know about our start. It is not about destroying every trace, but about managing information, making sure only the right stories survive. The inventory stela hidden in a museum. The underground room sealed. The robot stopped, eject a brick in a wall of silence. This plot of hiding is not just about power, it is about fear. If Giza's monuments were built by a culture before Egypt one, with knowledge of stars, math and engine, hearing past our guesses, it forces us to face the fragility of our own tale. The pharaohs seen as living gods become mere keepers, their divine right a borrowed cloak. The timeline of human progress, so carefully built, becomes a lie, showing gaps where high societies might have risen and fallen, their feet buried by disaster or plan. The groups that guard Giza, Egypt's government, global bodies, even the school world, may fear not just the truth but its meaning. That we are not the top of history, but a chapter in a cycle of forgetting and relearning. As you sink towards sleep, imagine standing before the Great Pyramid, its stones shining under the stars, its secrets locked in rooms and scrolls we will never see. The plot of hiding is not a single act, but a shadow cast across centuries. A refusal to let certain truths breathe. The stelae, the tunnels, the burned manuscript, they all point to a Giza that belongs to a time before Egypt, a time we are not supposed to know. The gatekeepers may lock the doors, but the stones still whisper and their voices grow louder in the silence of the night, pushing us to ask, what are they so afraid we will find? Now we face the heart of the mystery, the tech behind the Great Pyramid. A wonder of care, so advanced it challenges all we believe about old abilities. Was this the work of copper tools and human muscle, or something far past our grasp? Lie back, let the deserts whisper surround you. Listen as we explore a tech that seems to belong to another world. The inside halls, the down hall, the grand gallery, the king's chamber, are built with such exactness that joins our unseen angles never stray in strength holes after 4,500 years. We are told this was the work of Pharaoh Khufu's 4th dynasty around 2580 BC using ropes, ramps and copper chisels. But the deeper we look, the more unlikely this reason becomes, as if the pyramid was built with tools and knowledge we cannot explain, tools that feel alien to the time we give them. Think of the sheer scale of the task. The Great Pyramid has enough stone to build a wall around a small country with blocks cut from quarries, sometimes hundreds of miles away. The granite in the king's chamber from Aswan 800 kilometers south was shaped with a care that leaves no gap for even a paper sheet. Modern tests show copper tools the best the Egyptians had struggled to cut limestone, let alone granite, which is among the hardest stones known. To get the pyramid's smooth faces and tight joints, workers would have needed tools of great strength, maybe bronze or iron, neither of which were much used in the Old Kingdom. The logistics are just as hard. Moving a 15-ton block across desert land, lifting it hundreds of feet and placing it with near exactness would challenge today's cranes and lasers. Yet we are told this was done with sledge rollers and human muscle guided by starlight and water levels. The care of the pyramid's aim raises even more questions. Its base points to the cardinal directions with an error of just 0.05 degrees of feet, needing high survey ways. Modern builders with GPS and satellite nav struggle to get such exactness on this scale. The Egyptians had no compasses, no theodolits, yet they aimed a 13-acre structure to true north with near-perfect match. The base is so level the change to 0.1 centimeters means a grasp of land shape that defies the uneven limestone plateau it sits on. To make such a base, workers would have needed to measure and flatten huge areas with tools we have no record of, joining hundreds of laborers with a care that matches modern engineering software. The inside halls, like the Grand Gallery, with its stepped ceiling, spread millions of tons of weight. So well the structure has lived through quakes and invasions unhurt. This is not trial and error build. It is the work of a mind that understood physics, shape and material science on a level we link to the modern age. But it is not just the build that feels otherworldly. The pyramid's design holds knowledge that seems impossible for its time. The air shafts in the king's chamber, thin and unreachable, line up with Orion's belt and the pole star as they were around 2450 BC, eating a grasp of star motion and precession at 25,920-year cycle in Earth's wobble. The Egyptians tracked the Nile's floods using stars, but no text suggests they figured such long-term space patterns. The pyramid's size holds math constants. The outside divided by the height gives to pi. The slope holds the golden ratio. These ratios, exact to within tiny parts, suggest a grip of high math, not written in Egyptian records, which focus on practical shape, fall and measure, not universal constant. Even more amazing, multiply the height by 43,200, gets close to Earth's polar radius, and the base outside by the same factor matches the equator length. This scale factor tied to precession means knowledge of the planet's shape and size, ideas not formed until centuries later. This level of skill invites a radical question. Could the Great Pyramid be the product of a tech we have lost, or one we have never understood? The tools and ways given to the Egyptians, copper chisels, would ramps fall short of explaining the pyramid's care. Some researchers offer other ways like sound lift or high-cut methods, though no direct proof supports these thoughts. In old texts from other cultures we find echoes of such chances. The Sumerian N, and may Elish tales of gods shaping the world with tools of divine power, while Indian texts like the Mahabharata speak of devices that move stones with sound or light. Could the pyramid's builders have used similar ways lost when their culture vanished? The lack of tool marks on the pyramid stones, especially in the smooth granite of the king's chamber, suggests the tech that worked stone with a finesse past chisels, maybe sans precisions, also something we cannot yet name. This idea finds matches in other old sites. At Stonehenge, 5,000 years old, huge Sars end stones were moved dozens of miles and set up with sun aims needing engineering we struggle to explain. In Peru, Machu Picchu West, stone walls built by the Inca have blocks so tight they seem to defy gravity, with no mortar and no seen tool marks. The Baalbek reliefs in Lebanon, weighing up to 800 tons, work and placed with a care that challenges modern cranes. Most striking is Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a 12,000-year-old complex of cut pillars, some 20 tons, built before farming or writing. These sites like Giza suggest a global tradition of high builder knowledge that came suddenly and vanished just as far. Could the Great Pyramid be part of this web? A piece of a culture that spanned continents, leaving its mark in stone before fading into nothing. The most bold theory goes further, suggesting space influence. Writers like Eric von Daniken argue the pyramid's care, aims and math codes point to alien builders or advisors who shared high-tech with early humans. The idea is fringe, but it gains ground from the pyramid's oddities. How could a culture with no written knowledge of calculus or astronomy do such feats? The lack of writing, the empty rooms, the space sames, all could be signs of a use not rooted in human want but in a message meant for the start. While I guess this theory underlines the gap between what we see and what we can explain, forcing us to consider chances past our current grasp. A more grounded guess is that the pyramid was a tech marvel meant to keep knowledge through disaster. Its silence, no hieroglyphs, no royal claims, suggests a universal plan meant for any culture that could measure its size. The constant in its form, either golden ratio, earth size, or timeless, surviving the fall of tongues and cultures. Unlike paper or clay tablet, stone lasts, and the pyramid's strength proves it was built for geologic time, not human rules. Could its builders have seen a disaster, a flood, a climate shift, a social fall, and made a monument to guard their understanding? The Afric and humid period, ending around 4000 BC, changed the Sahara from a green paradise to a desert, moving peoples. If the pyramid predates this shift, as the Sphinx were suggest, it might be a beacon from a lost world designed to guide future peoples back to the truths they left behind. Picture the Great Pyramid under a starry sky. Its stones silent yet alive with purpose. Its deck with a human divine or otherworldly speaks, through care not words, a tongue of angles and dames that outlasts empires. The builders, whoever they were, left no name, only a test to measure, to question, to wonder. Tonight we chase a legend that has haunted humanity for ages. The tale of Atlantis, a lost culture of unmatched wisdom said to have vanished in a single night. Could Giza's monuments be its gift, a last echo of a people erased by disaster? Lie back, let the desert stillness hold you. Listen as we explore the chance that Giza's wonders were built by a culture we have forgotten. The story of Atlantis starts with Plato, the Greek philosopher who wrote of it in his dialogue Times and Critias around 360 BC. He described a mighty culture flourishing 9,000 years before his time, located past the Pillars of Hercules, likely the Strait of Gibraltar. Atlantis was a marvel of build, engine, engineering and culture. Its people masters of sailing stars and tech. Their island, rich with resources, had ring owls, big temples and palaces of shining stone. But their pride angered the gods, and in a single day and night quakes and floods swallowed Atlantis into the sea, leaving no trace but a tale passed down through generations. Plato's account, dismissed by many as a story, has fed guests for centuries. Could this lost culture be the key to Giza's mysteries? Its monuments a piece of a world that vanished long before Egypt's rise. The Great Pyramid and Sphinx with their oddities, fit eerily into this tale. The Sphinx's water, whereas said by geologist Robert Schoch, points to a time 7,000 to 10,000 years ago when heavy rains fell on a green Sahara. This lines up with Plato's timeline for Atlantis, putting its fall around 9,600 BC, during the end of the African humid period, when climate shifts turned lush lands to desert. The pyramid's math codes by the golden ratio and Earth's size suggest a knowledge of stars and shape, far past what we give to the 4th dynasty. Its care with a base flat to 0.1 centimeters and down to true north within 0.05 degrees hints at a tech that strains the limits of copper tools and human muscle. Could these monuments be the work of Atlantean survivors fleeing their sinking home to build a lasting sign on the Nile's banks? The idea is not as wild as it seems when we look past Egypt. Across the world, old sites hint at a lost chapter of human history. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to 9,600 BC, has huge stone pillars some 20 tons with complex carvings and lined with space events. Built before farming or writing, it challenges our view of prehistoric societies as simple. In Japan, the Y-on-A-gun monument submerged off the coast shows terraces and angles that suggest human craft from a time when sea levels were lower, maybe 10,000 years ago. In Bolivia, Pumapunka stone blocks cut with laser-like care defy explanation with Inca tools. These sites, like Giza, mark they come suddenly fully formed with no clear starters, as if drawing on a knowledge that vanished with its makers. Could Atlantis, or a culture like it, have been the source? Its influence spreading across continents before a catastrophe erased its heart. The Giza Plateau offers clues that echo this theory. The underground web under the pyramids and Sphinx, mapped by radar in 2008, shows rooms and tunnels too exact to be natural, suggesting a base older than the pharaoh. The Osiris shaft with its empty stone box and dod sound feels less like a tomb and more like a piece of a use we cannot name. The Coptic scroll lost to fire spoke of beacons of stone built before speech, a description that echoes Plato's account of Atlantis' grand build. The inventory stela and dream stela show Khufu and Thutmose, them enders not builders, as if Giza's monuments were taken from a time before Egypt. Together these hints paint a picture of a culture that left its mark in stone, knowing its world was fading, its knowledge at risk of being forgotten. But what kind of culture could do this? Plato described Atlantis as a society of high engineers, able to build ports, canals and temples that matched the wonders of Greece. If the Great Pyramid was their work, its build 2.3 million blocks, some 15 tons placed with near exactness, suggests a mastery of logistics, math and material science. The pyramid's link to Orion's belt and the pole star tied to the precession cycle of 25,920 years means a grasp of astronomy that Egypt's records do not reflect. The lack of hieroglyphs, so unlike Egyptian tombs, could show a culture that valued universal symbols, shapes, ratios over passing tongues. Atlantis, or a similar culture, might have built Giza as a time capsule, putting knowledge in stone to survive a disaster they saw coming, whether flood, quake, or climate shift. This brings us to the legend of the Hall of Records, a thought made popular by mystic Edgar Cayce in the early 20th century. Cayce said under the Sphinx lies a room holding the wisdom of Atlantis. Tools may be tech that could redefine our past. Radar scans in the 1980s and 2000s found holes under the Sphinx and pyramids, supporting the idea of hidden spaces. The sealed doors found by robots in the Great Pyramid shaft, one in 1993, by UAUT to another, in 2002 by the Pyramid rover, could lead to such a room. The copper pins on the first door, symbolic of divine power, might mark an edge to this archive meant only for those ready to understand its content. The Egyptian authorities' refusal to explore these spaces, calling them nothing feeds, guess that they know or fear what lies within. The Atlantis theory also links to a wider pattern of lost cultures. In Sumerian texts, the May Elish speaks of a world before the flood shaped by gods with divine tools. The Hindu Mahabharata describes old cities with tech that sounds like science fiction. These myths across cultures share a common thread: a gold age of knowledge ended by catastrophe, leaving only pieces in stone or story. The end of the African humid period, around 4000 BC, changed the Sahara into a desert, forcing peoples to the Nile where Egypt would rise. If Atlantis existed, its survivors might have carried their knowledge to Giza, building monuments to keep what their island could not. The Sphinxes, where the pyramids codes the underground web, all could be their gift, a message to future peoples that their world once was. Yet the quiet around these chances is deafening. The Egyptian authorities, backed by groups like UNESCO, tightly control Giza's digs. Finds that challenge the 4th Dynasty timeline. Radar scans, robot finds old text, dismissed or suppressed. This pattern of hiding, as we have seen, suggests a fear not of artifacts but of ideas. If Giza was built by a lost culture, it would mean the pharaohs were not the builders of their greatest wonders, but takers claiming a legacy they could not copy. It would force us to rethink human progress, admitting that high societies rose and fell long before a record start. The legend of Atlantis, whether literal or symbolic, holds this fear, a reminder that our history might be a cycle of forgetting, not a straight line to glory. Imagine the lost shores of Atlantis, its temples sinking under the waves, its people scattering to build one last monument under Egypt's stars. The Great Pyramid and Sphinx stand as their echo, silent, yet lasting, their secrets buried in stone and sand. The legend of Atlantis is more than a story. It is a question asking us to look past the pharaohs, past our timelines, to a culture that left its mark not to be remembered, but to ensure we never forget what we have lost. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a marvel of stone. Its 2.3 million blocks, a sign of care that defies ancient tools. But it is not just the seen structure that grips. It is the unseen, the way sound moves inside its rooms, as if the builders understood rules of sound we are just starting to grasp. Step into the king's chamber, the granite heart of the pyramid, and you will feel it. A space where whispers stay, where certain notes seem to vibrate the air itself. The chamber, built from huge granite blocks from Aswan 800 kilometers away, is a box of perfect size, 10 meters long, 5 meters wide, 5.8 meters high. Its walls fit so tight no blade can slip between, creating a sound setting unlike any other in Egypt. Speaks often, your voice carries with odd clarity. Chant a low note and the stone seems to hum in reply, as if tuned to a tone woven into its design. This is not imagination, it is measurable. Researchers, including sound engineers, have studied the king's chamber and found its size lines up with sound ratios, creating a resonance that boosts certain tones. A note at about 110 Hz, for example, makes a standing wave of vibration that feels almost physical, as if the chamber was built to catch and lift sound. The granite, rich in quartz, is a natural conductor of vibration. Its crystal structure, able to resonate like a tuning fork. When hit or exposed to certain sounds, the stone vibrates, holding notes in ways that suggest planned design. This is not the random echo of a cave or tomb. It is a controlled sound space, engineered to shape sound with a care that matches modern concert halls. The thing goes past the king's chamber. Deep under the Giza Plateau in the Osiris shaft, near Khafre's causeway, another sound mystery unfolds. This straight tunnel, dropping over 30 meters into the rock, ends in a room with 6 nooks and a stone box empty of any burial traces. Here too sound acts strange. Whispers carry across the room with startling clarity, while louder sounds seem muffled, taken in by the stone. Sound tests show the room resonates at low tones around 100 to 120 Hz, creating a feel some call trance-like, as if the space was made to change mind state. The smooth walls, cut with even tool marks, lift this effect, suggesting a deliberate grasp of how sound works with stone. This is not a tomb, it is a room built to sing, to hold vibrations that link the physical and the unseen. What could this mean? In old Egypt, sound was wholly tied to creation and divine order. The god Thoth, master of wisdom, was said to have spoken the world into being, and priests used to chant music and tools to talk with the gods. but the sound of the Great Pyramid and Osiris shaft goes past ritual. They suggest a tech of sound, a mastery of physics, that could use vibrations for uses we cannot fully grasp. Some researchers guess the king's chamber was a resonance room made to boost certain tones for spirit or practical effects. The low hum of 110 Hz, for example, is known to bring calm or changed mind states, a thing studied in modern brain science. Could the pyramid's builders have used sound to influence the mind, to link with space forces, or even to shape energy? This idea finds echoes in other old cultures. In Malta, the hypogeum of Halas Efleen, a 5,000-year-old underground temple, has rooms tuned to resonate at 110 to 111 Hz, creating effects some believe were used for rites or healing. In Peru, Chave in D. Huanta's stone halls boost low-frequency sounds, guiding priests through dark passages with sound cues. These sites like Giza suggest a global tradition of sound engine, nearing where sound was not just art but tech used to shape experience or setting. The Great Pyramid's granite, with its quartz, could act as a piezoelectric material, making small electric charges under vibration. While I guess this lines up with thoughts inspired by Nikola Tesla, who believed old structures could use Earth's natural energies through resonance. Could the pyramid be a machine not of gears but of tones, built to tap into forces we have forgotten how to use? The ideas are deep. If the pyramid and its underground rooms were made for resonance, they might serve a use past symbol. Some researchers, like engineer Christopher Dunn, argue the Great Pyramid was a power maker using sound or vibration to make energy. The king's chamber, with its granite and exact size, could focus sound waves, maybe to charge objects, shape materials, or even talk across distances. The air shafts lined with stars might have served as pipes, not for air, but for energy, linking the pyramid to space rhythm. While no direct proof supports this, the rooms, sound, and the pyramid's care aim to true north, holding pi and the golden ratio show a knowledge of physics past each test's written abilities. The Osiris shaft, with its similar sound traits, could be part of this system, an underground match, made to resonate in tune with the pyramid above. This brings us to a bolder question. Who had such knowledge? The Egyptians of the 4th dynasty were skilled builders, but their texts show no grasp of high sound or piezoelectric effects. Their tools, copper chisels with levers, could not make the flawless granite faces of the king's chamber. The lack of hieroglyphs in the pyramid, so unlike other Egyptian tombs, suggests a use not tied to their faith. Could this tech belong to a lost culture, one that understood sound as a force, not just a ritual? The Coptic scroll burned before reading spoke of beacons of stone built before speech, hinting at people who left their mark at Giza. The Sphinx Sesswater, where dated to 7,000 years ago, supports this, as does the underground web, with its exact rooms, suggesting a forgotten base. The resonance of Giza also links to the legend of Atlantis described by Plato as a culture of high engineers. If Atlantis existed, its survivors might have brought their knowledge to the Nile, building monuments to keep their science through a coming disaster. The sound traits of the pyramid and Osiris shaft could be pieces of this tech, made to use sound for uses we cannot guess, maybe healing, talk, or energy making. The pattern of hiding we have found, sealed tunnels, silenced robots, burned scrolls, suggests modern authorities fear this truth. The Egyptian government, backed by groups like UNESCO, limits access to Giza's sensitive sites. Could they be hiding proof of an ancient tech too powerful or too alien to show? This fear of show is not only in Egypt. In India, the old city of Dwarkas, emerged off the coast, is said to hold structures with high engineering, yet digs are limited. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform texts hint at divine weapons that shape sound or light, dismissed as myth. The plot of silence, as we have seen, guards Giza's secrets with locked gates and official denials. If the pyramid sound was part of a tech from a lost culture, showing it could challenge our view of human progress, suggesting we are not the first to master such forces. Some even guess a space star, as Eric von Däniken said, pointing to the pyramid's care as proof of alien guidance. while fringe this idea underlines the mystery. The tech of Giza feels past human, past ancient, past us. Could the Great Pyramid and Sphinx be the work of space beings, visitors from the stars who left their mark in stone? The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as a monument to the impossible. The inside rooms, like the King's Chamber, are built with granite moved 800 kilometers, fit so tight no blade can slip between. The air shafts point to Orion's Belton, the pole star as they were in 2450 BC, suggesting knowledge of star motion past Egypt's record. The pyramid holds math, constants by the golden ratio, Earth size in ways that mean a grasp of shape and astronomy, not written in the 4th dynasty. The Sphinx with its water, where from 7,000 years ago, hints at an even older start. These oddities strain the tale of copper tools and human muscle. Could they point to a source past Earth, a culture from the cosmos that shaped Giza's wonders? This idea, radical as it sounds, was made popular by Erich von Däniken in his 1968 book Chariots of the Gods. Von Däniken argued old monuments, like the Great Pyramid, could only be explained by space help. The care of Giza's build, he said, needed tech far past what humans had 4,500 years ago. Moving 15-ton blocks, aiming structures to space bodies holding universal constants. These feats suggest tools or knowledge not found in Egyptian texts. The lack of hieroglyphs in the Pyramidon, like every other royal tomb, adds to the mystery. Why build such a monument and leave no claim, no story, unless the builders were not of this world, their use not tied to human glory? Von Däniken guessed that aliens visited Earth, sharing their tech with early humans, or building these structures as beacons, observatories, or even landing sites. The proof, while a guess, is strong when seen through this lens. The Great Pyramid's aim to true north within a tiny fraction needs a global view, knowledge of Earth's axis and magnetic field, ideas not written in old Egypt. The air shaft, star aims targeting Orion and the pole star, suggest a focus on the cosmos, as if the pyramid were a bridge between Earth and the heaven. Orion in Egyptian myth was linked to Osiris, god of rebirth, but the care of these aims means a science grasp, not just faith symbol. The pyramid's math codes its outside, giving to pi when divided by its height. Its slope, holding the golden ratio, point to a universal tongue, one that might resonate with beings who sail the stars. The lack of writing, so unlike Egypt's wordy tombs, could mean the builders spoke through shape, a tongue that goes past planets. Past Giza, other old sites feed this guess. In Peru, the Nazca Line's huge ground drawings, seen only from the air, stretch across the desert. Their use unknown. Were they signals to sky visitors, as von Däniken said? In Bolivia, Puma Punka stone blocks cut with care that defies Inca tools seem to belong to a tech we cannot explain. The megaliths of Baalbek, Lebanon, weighing up to 800 tons, challenge human engineering even today. These sites, like Giza, share a mark. They come suddenly, with no clear text starters, as if gifted by a source past Earth. The Sumerian Anunnaki gods, said to come from the heavens, are described in old texts as teachers of culture. Could they, or beings like them, have guided Giza's build, leaving monuments as proof of their presence? The underground web under Giza adds another layer. Radar scans in 2008 showed runes and tunnels, some with shaped care, suggesting a base older than the pharaohs. The Osiris shaft, with its empty stone box and eerie sound, resonates at tones that change mind, hinting at a use tied to sound or energy. Could these spaces be pieces of space tech, made for top energy making or even star signal? The sealed doors in the pyramid shafts, found by robots in 1993 and 2000 to have copper pins, metals holy to Egyptian gods linked with divine power. Were these markers for a tech we cannot grasp, left by beings who knew their creations would outlast their visit? This brings us to the most bold question. Why the silence? The Egyptian authorities, through the Supreme Council of Antiquities, have always blocked search of Giza's hidden spaces. Radar oddities under the Sphinx, robot finds in the pyramid, and historical reports of underground rooms are dismissed as nothing. This pattern of hiding, as we have seen, suggests a fear of what might be found. If Giza's monuments were built by space beings or with their guidance showing this could upend our grasp of human history, it would mean we are not alone, that our greatest feats might be borrowed from the stars. Groups like UNESCO, which watches, dig sites and global governments, might fear the chaos of such as shown, not just for science but for faith, culture and our sense of self. The plot deepens where we think of the wider pattern. Old texts across cultures hint at sky beings. The Hindu Viman as flying machines, and the Mahabharata describe their fights with high tech. The Book of Enoch, an apocryphal text, speaks of watchers who came down from the heavens teaching humans forbidden knowledge. The Dogon people of Mali, with their detailed knowledge of the Sirius star system, claim it came from amphibious beings from the stars. These stories, dismissed as myth, share a common thread: contact with high beings who shaped early cultures. Giza's oddities, its care, its space aims, its silence, fit this tale, suggesting a link to a cosmic mind that left its mark and then left. But why leave such monuments if space beings built or guided Giza's build? What was their use? The pyramid's strength, surviving for 1,500 years of quakes and invasions, suggests a plan for geologic time. Its math codes, pi the golden ratio, earth size, are universal, meant for any culture smart enough to measure them. Could it be a beacon signaling to future visitors or to humanity when we are ready? The Sphinx, gazing at the equinox sunrise, might mark a space meeting point, its water-worn stone a sign of its age. The underground rooms, sealed and silent, could hold tech or records waiting for a time when we are prepared to understand. The pattern of suppression, burned scrolls, locked tunnels, stopped robots implies that some, perhaps even modern powers, know more than they admit. The inside rooms, the king's chamber, the grand gallery, the underground halls are built with granite and limestone, fits so tight no blade can slip between. The air shafts point to stars like Orion's belt. The ratios of its size hold pi and the golden ratio, and its measures mirror Earth's polar radius and equator length. We're told this was Khufu's and built around 2580 BC. But the lack of hieroglyphs, grave goods, or a mummy challenges that tale. The pyramid's silence, its base aims, its lasting strength, they suggest a use far grander than a pharaoh's afterlife. What if the pyramid was never meant to honor the dead, but to guard knowledge for the living, for a future that might forget all else? This idea changes the pyramid from a monument into a machine, not of gears or wires, but of shape and endurance. Its design is too exact, too universal, to serve only one king or one era. The constants it holds, pi the golden ratio, earth size, are timeless, independent of tongue, culture, or belief. Unlike paper scrolls or clay tablets which crumble or become unreadable stone lists, unlike hieroglyphs which need a Rosetta Stone to read, math speaks to any culture with the tools to measure. The pyramid's silence, its lack of writing, is not a miss, but a plan, a way to ensure its message survives the fall of empires, the loss of tongues, the forgetting of God. It stands as a store, a vault of knowledge meant to outlast disaster and guide a future world back to truths it might have lost. The pyramid's math codes are the key to this use. Divide its outside 921.6 meters by its height 146.6 meters, and you get 6.2857 within 0.1% of 2 pi. The slope at 51.84 degrees holds the golden ratio, a constant honored across cultures for its balance. Multiply the height by 43,200 and you approximate Earth's polar radius. Multiply the outside by the same factor and you match the equator length. This 43,200 is no accident. It is tied to the precession of the equinoxes, a 25,920-year cycle in Earth's wobble, a thing needing centuries of watch to see. These ratios are not the work of trial and error, but of planned math, a tongue of numbers that goes past time. Whoever built the pyramid knew that pi and the golden ratio would stay true, that Earth's shape would last, that the stars would shift but return. They built a structure to keep these truths, not for Egypt, but for anyone who might come after. This thought of a knowledge store finds echoes in other old sites. Stonehenge, built around 2500 BC, lines up with the solstices, holding space cycles in its stones. The megaliths of Baalbek, Lebanon, some weighing 800 tons, suggest a use past mere build, the care hinting at a lost science. While on Aegon is sunken structures off Japan, maybe 10,000 years old, have terraces that define Atral, whereas if built to withstand rising seas. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to 9600 BC, with its cut pillars aligned to stars, predates farming and writing, yet speaks of a skill we cannot explain. These sites like Giza feel like anchors in time, built to survive disasters that erase their makers. The Great Pyramid, with its space, aims and math care, could be the greatest of these. A time capsule made for a world healing from fall. What kind of fall? The African humid period, ending around 4000 BC, changed the Sahara from a green paradise to a desert, moving peoples to the Nile where Egypt would rise. Rock records show floods, climate shifts, and upheavals that could have destroyed whole cultures. Plato's legend of Atlantis, a society swallowed by the sea 9,000 years before his time, might reflect such a disaster. If the pyramid's builders, whether Atlantean space or a lost human culture, saw this coming, they might have made Giza as a guard, a way to keep their knowledge through the chaos. The pyramid's strength, surviving quakes, invasions, and 4,500 years, proves it was built for geologic time, not human rule. Its silence, no hieroglyphs, no royal claims, ensures its message is universal, meant for any culture in any era that can measure its truths. The pyramid's sound, as we have explored, deepens this youth. The king's chamber resonates at tones like 110 Hz, bringing calm or changed states, while the Osiris shaft below boosts whispers in odd ways. These traits suggest a tech of sound, perhaps used to link with space forces or keep knowledge through vibration. Could the pyramid be a machine for memory? Its rooms tuned to tones that hold information in ways we do not yet grasp. Nikola Tesla, who studied resonance and energy, believed old structures could use both natural forces. The pyramid's granite, rich in quartz, might act as a piezoelectric conductor, making charges under vibration. This guest idea lines up with the pyramid's design, its care, its aims, its silence, suggesting a youth past ritual, a tech meant to last. This brings us to a haunting question. Why hide this knowledge? The pattern of hiding we have found, sealed tunnels, stopped robots, burned scrolls, suggests a planned effort to keep Giza's secrets buried. The Egyptian authorities, backed by groups like UNES, see a limit access to sensitive sites, dismissing raid or oddities and robot finds as nothing. If the pyramid is a store for future peoples, why suppress its search? Perhaps the truth it holds about a lost culture, high tech, or even space start is too disruptive. It would challenge the story of Egypt as the cradle of Giza's wonders, suggesting the pharaohs were keepers, not creators. It would force us to admit that human history is not a steady climb, but a cycle of rise and fall, with knowledge gained and lost across millennia. The plot of silence goes past Egypt. In Mesoamerica, Maya books were burned by conquerors, erasing knowledge that might have matched European science. In Mesopotamia, texts hinting at pre-flood cultures were dismissed as myths until sites like Göbekli Tepe proved otherwise. The Great Pyramid, with its universal codes, might be a guard against such losses, a monument built to outlast forgetting. Its builders, whether human or otherwise, chose stone over words, shape over tongue, knowing that cultures fade, but numbers last. The pyramid is a reset point, a beacon for a future that might need to relearn either golden ratio or Earth's place in the cosmos. A lesson cut for a world reborn from ruin. Welcome back, seekers of the eternal shadows, to the last chapter of Mystery History for Sleep. I am Mr. H, your true guide through the veiled riddles of time, where the sands of Giza hold truths too deep for our waking minds to fully hold. Over these nights we have journeyed together across the Giza Plateau, standing before the Sphinx with its water-worn scars that whisper of rains long stock, tracing the Great Pyramid space codes that hold the very secrets of the universe. We have questioned its silent rooms, empty of a pharaoh's remains, and found stelae that paint Khufu and Thutmose, not as builders but as humble enders of something far older. We have gone down into the hidden tunnels under, is a followed robots to sealed doors that guard unspoken mysteries and mourned a Coptic scroll lost to flames before its words could rewrite our past. We have opened a plot of silence woven by those in power, explored the legend of Atlantis as a possible cradle for these wonders, and even dared to think space hands shaping the stones. We have listened to the pyramid's resonant hum, a symphony of ancient physics that hints at texts past our grasp. Now as the desert night deepens and the stars wheel above in their eternal dance, we come to the end a moment to weave these threads into a cloth that shows the true shape of Giza's riddle. It is not a shape of kings or gods, not a monument to glory or death. It is the shape that memory forgot, a form cut in stone to defy forgetting itself. A store made not for the past but for the future. The Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, the whole plateauist, and as a silent archive, a vault of knowledge built to last the fall of worlds, waiting for a time when humanity might need to remember what it has lost. Close your eyes. Let the soft beat of my voice carry you and allow this final tale to open like the horizon at dawn, showing the light in the dark. From the start, the clues have pointed to a truth that goes past Egypt's pharaohs. The Sphinx, with its wear patterns cut by rains that fell 7,000 years ago, predates the dried desert, we know, suggesting a builder from a greener, forgotten age. The Great Pyramid, its base sane to true north with impossible care, holds pi and the golden ratio in its size, mirroring Earth's curve and the precession of the equinox's knowledge that should have needed telescopes and calculus tools absent from old Egypt's. The empty king's chamber, resonant with tones that change mind, feels less like a tomb, more like a room tuned to space harmonies. The stelae inventory and dreams speak of mending, not making, as if Khufu and Thutmose IV stumbled upon holy sites they could honor but not claim. The underground web, with its exact runes and dawed sound, hints at a base for a use we cannot name. While sealed doors found by robots stay unopened, their copper pins glinting like warnings from another time. These elements woven together from a tale not of Egyptian triumph, but of taking a gift from a lost culture that knew its end was near. Whether Atlantis, as Plato described, sinking under waves in a disaster of floods and quakes, or another high society erased by the Sahara's change, the builders of Giza seemed to have seen oblivion. They did not write their names or stories in hieroglyphs, knowing tongues fade and cultures crumble. Instead, they put their wisdom in the universal tongue of math and shape, cutting constants like pi and the golden ratio into stone that would outlast empires. The pyramid's silence is its strength, a message meant for any future, any peoples who might measure its slopes and rediscover Earth's shape, the star cycles, the ratios that bind the cosmos. Imagine a world on the edge of fall. Rains, failing seas, rising societies breaking under the weight of change. The builders, masters of stars and engine, nearing make a monument to survive the storm, not to lift themselves but to anchor knowledge for those who come after. They aim it to the stars, knowing Orion's belt would return in its cyclist pace clock ticking through millennia. They tune its rooms to resonate, perhaps to keep information in vibrations, or to guide future seekers through changed mind states. The Sphinx, half lion, half god, gazes at the equinox sunrise, marking the renewal of time. Its water scars a record of the flood that nearly took their world. This is no tomb for a king, but a library for humanity. A store where the shape of memory lasts, even when memory itself is forgotten. The plot of hiding we have found makes sense in this light. The Egyptian authorities, schools and global groups guard is not just for tourism or saving, but because its truth threatens our fragile sense of progress. If the pyramid is a time capsule from a lost culture, it admits that high knowledge has risen and fallen before, that our own world might not be the peak but a passing chapter. The burned Coptic scroll describing beacons of stone before speech was silenced to stop this show. The sealed doors, the dismissed radar scans, the halted searches, they all guard a story that keeps us blind to our psychical path. Even the bold guess of space involvement fits Hurif beings from the stars built or guided Giza. The pyramid becomes a cosmic store, a message from beyond waiting for us to grow enough to understand it. But the pyramid's truth lies in its patience. It does not ask for belief or worship. It simply stands, its stones weathering time, its code waiting to culture. Rising from ruins perhaps after our own fall, it offers a blueprint. The ratio of pi to rebuild circles, the golden ratio for balance and design, Earth's size to map the planet. The aims to Orion remind them of the stars' eternal dance. The resonant rooms teach them to listen to the universe's hum. This is the shape that memory forgot a form so lasting it outlives forgetting. A monument built not to remember the past, but to ensure the future remembers how to begin again. As we end this journey, let the weight of Giza's riddle settle upon you like the desert night. The great pyramid and sphinx are more than stones. They are a question, a test, a gift. They ask us to look past the tales we have been told, to question the silence, to measure the truths hidden in plain sight. Whether built by a lost human culture, guided by space beings, or born of Atlantis est, Giza stands as a store for what matters most. The knowledge that binds us to the cosmos, the constants that stay when all else fades. In this shape, memory lasts forgotten, yet unforgotten, waiting with the patience of stone for the day we're ready to remember.